Watching TV has changed over time. Streaming has become the new norm. That's why Golden State Media Concepts television podcast dives headfirst to the world of cord cutting. Want to be on the loop of what's hot in Netflix? Or if it's not a preference, what about original shows in Hulu? We've got you covered. Join us as we fill in the blanks and talk about movies to stream and what show you should be binging. This is the Golden State Media Concepts television podcast.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC television podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Sarah, wishing you a happy Wednesday. For many people, Wednesday is hump day. You've made it through the middle of the week. For me, Wednesday means I get to share news from the land of television. New shows that are being canceled, shows that have new actors added to the lineup, all of those fun things that happen in the land of television. It's a magical place, the land of television. Kind of made up, kind of in my own head. But at any rate, we are going to talk about some stories. We're going to start off with Stranger Things that is releasing in July. Season 3 is coming out in July 5th. People are very excited, and we have just a few weeks left to go before we can watch that on Netflix. We have a slightly more detailed synopsis as to what is to be expected in this season. If you haven't watched it, you should definitely get on binge watching the first 2 seasons, just so you can catch up, because I don't think this is a show you want to just jump into. Maybe, but I'm thinking you want to watch those first two seasons. So David Harbour has hyped that the finale is the most moving thing that he has filmed so far, but we don't know what will happen to get us to that point, as even the first trailer didn't really give us so much to go on. I mean, we know that the new Coke, which is now old, but the new Coke in 1984 is making an appearance, but that doesn't tell us anything. So it's, 1985. Anyway, here is the Stranger Things Season 3 synopsis. It's 1985 in Hawkins, Indiana, and summer's heating up. School's out, there's a brand new mall in town, and the Hawkins crew are on the cusp of adulthood. Romance blossoms and complicates the group's dynamic, and they'll have to figure out how to grow up without growing apart. Meanwhile, danger looms. When the town's threatened by enemies old and new, Eleven and her friends are reminded that evil never ends. It evolves. Now they'll have to band together to survive and remember that friendship is always stronger than fear. This still doesn't tell us anything, does it? I mean, it tells us some things. There's a new mall, the romances. I feel like we pretty much extrapolated that from the way the last season ended and the few things that we have heard about this new season. So, not really sure that I feel like that synopsis tells me anything new. It will be interesting to see what those old enemies are. Maybe they're from the Upside Down, or maybe they're from the lab where Eleven spent most of her life. Maybe Sean Astin's character will get to come back as a zombie. I just made that up. I don't know. I won't talk about Sean Astin because I don't know if you've seen season 2, but he's in season 2. So, obviously I told you something. So, spoiler alert. Sorry, too late. Anyway, now that I've ruined that for you, there is a new Dark Tower series, which is coming out on Amazon. And it is, of course, an adaptation of Stephen King's series of novels. I loved that series. I don't read Stephen King horror books much, but I did love his Dark Tower series. It has been announced that Michael Rooker will be appearing in this series. It's not been announced what role he'll be playing. Some have speculated that he'll be playing Eldred Jonas, a failed gunslinger. He will be starring opposite Sam Strike, who is playing Roland Deschain, the gunslinger in question, and Jasper, Pakonin, I just butchered that name and I apologize, who is starring as Martin Broadcloak, the Man in Black, also known as Walter Paddock. That is the person that Deschain has vowed to kill. Amazon's series is expected to be a more in-depth and faithful adaptation of the books than the movie that came out in 2017, which starred Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. The series is said to take place many years earlier and will depict Roland Deschain's origin, how he first became a gunslinger and got his guns, his first conflict with the Man in Black, his first love, and his first mission as a gunslinger. So it's kind of a prequel in some ways. The cast also includes Jerome Flynn as Stephen Deschain, Anna Padrao as Cordelia Delgado, Abraham Papula as McCready, Joanna Ribeiro as Susan Delgado, and Ivan Kay in an undisclosed role. The Dark Tower series was developed by Glenn Mazzara, and the first 13-episode season is currently in production in Croatia. It is expected to arrive sometime in 2020. I'm intrigued. I will probably check it out. I still have not seen the movie. I heard so many terrible things about it, although I do love Idris Elba, so I may have to watch it just for him, and I should watch it to form my own opinion. I'm just so far behind on movies. It's crazy. I could watch movies every moment of the day from now until doomsday, and I'd never catch up because they just keep making them, of course. It's how the world works. In other television news, this isn't exactly television news since Game of Thrones is now over, but I did find it intriguing that Sophie Turner didn't initially tell her parents that she was auditioning for Game of Thrones. She played Sansa Stark in the series, and she didn't tell her parents. So apparently they were looking for, let me back up, casting director Nina Gold was visiting multiple schools across the UK in a bid to cast young actors. And so Sophie Turner said, this was in an interview with Vogue Paris, where she told Jessica Chastain, "Me and all my friends auditioned," she said. "We just thought it was kind of a fun, jokey thing to do. And then I just got callback after callback." So I can kind of understand, if they're visiting schools, and so she auditioned, but clearly she's a minor at this point, maybe not, but tell your parents, kid. My parents found out when I was in the final 7, and then my mom kind of freaked out, and she called my dad and said, "I don't know if we can do this." I completely understand, parent. Yeah, mom. But my dad said, "Shut up. This is what she has wanted her whole life. You have to let her give it a go." She did eventually, of course, receive the role of Sansa Stark, and it was her mom who delivered the news to her. Turner says, "She jumped on me and said, 'You got the part.' And we both ran and jumped in the pool and ate loads of pizza that whole day. It was the best day ever." I love that story. They just got excited, jumped in a pool, ate pizza. I mean, how else do you celebrate? That's awesome. I am just fascinated by this story that she didn't tell her parents, but it seems like it's something that she had wanted to do, even if she says that she and her friends did it as a jokey thing. Obviously, it turned out pretty well, considering that she played Sansa Stark in all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones, and now she is starring in The Dark Phoenix and has been in the X-Men franchise as the younger version of Phoenix, of Jean Grey. I would say she's doing pretty well, but the one, the parental part of me says, tell your parents, kid. Don't just spring it on them after you're already in the final 7. Come on. And then I can only imagine what her parents thought when they actually found out more about the show, because it's not the easiest thing to watch all the time. I cannot really imagine watching my child go through the things that Sansa Stark goes through, or half the characters on that show. As a parent, I might be a little traumatized, horrified, something. But thankfully I am not a parent of an actor, so I don't have to worry about that. Unless my dogs decide they need to be in shows and sneak off and audition. But I think that's not going to happen. On that note, let's go ahead and take a break before I tell random stories about my puppies. We are going to take our break, as I said. When we come back, more television news from shows that have been renewed, shows that have been canceled, new shows that are coming out. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Television Podcast, and I will be right back.
Want to know the latest and hottest music hitting the airwaves? Don't be left out. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Music Podcast. Keith keeps you on the loop with everything you need to know from pop, rock, hip-hop, and the top 40. And we'll throw in news of your favorite artists, concert and tour dates, and so much more. Listen no further, because this is the gold standard in music podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Television Podcast. Let's move on to The Walking Dead. Not about the new season, although Fear the Walking Dead is, a couple of weeks into their new season. But the original Walking Dead, and the fact that many of the actors have once again been nominated or submitted for consideration for Emmy Awards. Between the entire cast, the entire ensemble in its 9 seasons, no one has actually earned an Emmy Award for acting, which is kind of crazy. I mean, there's some amazingly good acting on that show. This year, Andrew Lincoln and Lauren Cohan have been both submitted for consideration once again, but they've been submitted in a different category. And they've been submitted for considering in the guest star category, which makes sense considering that they only appeared in 5 episodes for the most recent season. Neither have won an Emmy to date. Series regulars Norman Reedus, Melissa McBride, Denai Guerrera, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and Samantha Morton have also been submitted for consideration. No actor, as I said, from AMC's Walking Dead has been recognized at the Emmys, but Jeffrey Dean Morgan has won a Critics' Choice Award for his role as Negan, as is appropriate because he's amazing in that role. I love Jeffrey Dean Morgan, and I hate Negan, but I love him because it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He somehow makes me sometimes love Negan, except that I don't. I hate him. Very conflicted. Reedus and Morgan were also submitted for Best Drama Supporting Actor. McBride, Guerrera, and Morton were submitted for Best Drama Supporting Actress. Samantha Morton is amazing in her role, but she's so creepy and so ugh. I don't have any conflicting emotions on her character. I hate her. There's no love there whatsoever. And then Lincoln was submitted for Best Drama Guest Actor for Season 9, Episode 5. Cohan was submitted for Best Drama Guest Actor in that same episode. We wish them luck. I still think it's crazy that no one has won an Emmy for acting on that, but I don't know. What do I know? The Walking Dead does return for its 10th season in October. The Rick Grimes movies have not yet been given a release date. In case you weren't aware, Rick Grimes is no longer on The Walking Dead, but he's not dead. He's going to be appearing in movies, in Walking Dead movies. They are expanding the franchise. So we'll see how that goes. Good luck to the actors. Hopefully this year will be the one where you finally break that streak of nobody winning an Emmy for acting. In terms of TV shows, news of TV shows, Don Cheadle, Emily Mortimer, and Helena Howard are to star in Quibi sci-fi drama series Don't Look Deeper. This is a series that is being run on Quibi, which is a short-form video platform. So it'll be interesting to see how this series plays out in terms of, short form. These 3, Don Cheadle, Emily Mortimer, and Helena Howard, as I said, are set to star in this series. It's a sci-fi drama for Quibi, and it is co-written by Lost co-creator Jeffrey Lieber, who also serves as the showrunner, along with Charlie McDonnell. The show is set in Merced, California, 15 minutes into the future, which I can't quite wrap my brain around it. That's why it's sci-fi, because I can't quite wrap my brain around it. How is it 15 minutes into the future? By the time I film it, I'll be way past 15 minutes in the future. I'm being too literal. The show centers on a high school senior who can't seem to shake the feeling that something about her just isn't right. And that something is, she's not human. She's not one of us. This revelation of what she really is, where she comes from, and who has started looking for her sets in motion a series of events that suddenly puts her entire life in jeopardy. Don't Look Deeper, joins Quibi's growing slate, which already includes comedy series Chrissy's Court, starring Chrissy Teigen and her mom, the comedy Dummy, starring and executive produced by Anna Kendrick, from Deadbeat co-creator Cody Heller and independent studio Whip. The series are part of Quibi's inaugural slate of programming, featuring A-list talent in front and behind the camera, with projects from Steven Spielberg, Steven Soderbergh, Sam Raimi, Antoine Fuqua, Jason Blum, and Guillermo del Toro. I can say that, geez, in the works. Naomi Watts has been rumored to star in the Blumhouse series. And so, interesting. I am intrigued by the whole concept of the 15 minutes in the future. I do enjoy sci-fi sometimes. I mean, not every single sci-fi, but the majority of sci-fi. I really like Don Cheadle. I like Emily Mortimer. Not as sure about Helena Howard. I am not sure if I'm that familiar with her work, but I'm also intrigued by Quibi as a platform in terms of short form videos, how that's going to play out, how it's all going, where I'll be able to find it, etc. Be interested to see how that happens. So looking forward to this show. We'll have to check it out if I can figure out where. I'll figure it out, but you know what I mean. Once I figure it out, how to actually get it in order to watch it. Yes, really, I can get that sentence out. The next story is about a new show that is coming for Warner Media's new streaming service, and that is Dune: The Sisterhood. It's intriguing to me that they already have kind of a spin-off for this new series, even though the first Dune movie hasn't come out yet. So to back up, Denis Villeneuve, who is writing, directing, and producing the Dune film, is also directing the pilot of the series. The Dune film is actually, in theory, going to be 2 films, because those books are just so sprawling in scope. If the first one, of course, they would like to do 2. It depends on how the first one does, as often happens. So there may or may not be 2. But despite whether or not there will be 2 or how it will be received, they have already greenlit Dune: The Sisterhood. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the intent of the series is to explore the universe of Dune through the eyes of the Bene Gesserit, the secretive female order at the heart of the series. The Hollywood Reporter says John Spates will pen the script for the TV series, which hails from legendary television. Villeneuve and Spates will executive produce alongside Brian Herbert, Brian Merritt, and Kim Herbert for the Frank Herbert estate. Kevin J. Anderson will co-produce. Spates co-wrote the screenplay alongside Villeneuve. Villeneuve had this to say on the project and his choice to single out the Bene Gesserit for television. The Bene Gesserit have always been fascinating to me. Focusing a series around that powerful order of women seemed not only relevant and inspiring, but a dynamic setting for the television series. This series will be among the first original shows for the new Warner Media streaming service, which will include all Warner-owned content. That includes HBO, TBS, TNT, and CNN. This follows a move by Warner Media to expand Dune into an entertainment empire that will eventually extend to comics and video games, so they are going the whole franchise route. The first film, possibly one of 2, as I said, is set for release on November 20th of 2020, so we've got a ways for that. No word on when this new series is coming out, but we'll see how it goes, if how the movie is received, how this is received, how the whole franchise thing will be received. I know people love the books, which is both good and bad. It depends on, if you love the books, sometimes having it made into a movie is disappointing, and it has been made into movies before that people have received with various degrees of enjoyment. I mean, it's hard to take as I said, a story of this scope and fit it into a movie. So it's probably a good idea that they're trying to do 2 movies. But then also when you have that deep love and attachment to a book like Dune, pretty much no one can live up to their expectations. That's just how it is. The comments on the article range. Nobody seems terribly excited, but people are saying, "Oh my gosh, another streaming platform." It doesn't say. Let's see. This one says, "I have absolutely no hope at all that any of this will be any good." So, he says there's a reason that publishers initially rejected Dune as being too intellectual. So that person has no hope. Yeah, as I scroll through, most people are not terribly thrilled with it, but there are a few positive comments, and then there are a lot of comments commenting on other comments, which we're not going to get into because then it just goes on forever, and we don't need to go there. Where we do need to go is another break. So when we come back, we'll talk about some shows that have been canceled and renewed. Stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Television Podcast, and I will be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to the GSMC Television Podcast. As I said before the break, we're going to be talking about some shows that have been renewed, some shows that have been canceled, etc. The first story is that Netflix has renewed Love, Death, and Robots for a second season, although no release date has yet been announced. I am intrigued by this show because it has been described by a show that is meant that can help people to get through the gap between seasons of Dark Mirror. Dark Mirror, of course, has several episodes per season that are all standalone episodes. None of them are related. I mean, it's not a series that goes in order. It's all different stories, different cast, etc. So this Love, Death, and Robots debuted in early 2019. It featured 18 short films. According to a tweet from Netflix See What's Next Twitter account, Jennifer Yu Nelson will be the supervising director on all of the upcoming episodes. She has done episodes from the animated Spawn series, from Kung Fu Panda 2, Kung Fu Panda 3, and The Darkest Minds. As for how many episodes we can expect or when they'll be available, Netflix hasn't shared those details. If the second season, though, is anything like the first, it will likely be based on existing short fiction, which is very cool. And obviously there's going to be a lot of that to draw from. So the premise of this, so it's based on existing short fiction. They are short films, and each episode, even though they aren't related per se, but each episode has something to do with love, death, and robots, sometimes all three. There was some complaints from viewers of the first season that there wasn't a lot of female perspective or female voice in that first season. So they have brought in Jennifer Yu Nelson as the director and showrunner, and hopefully doing that will give more of that female perspective, female voice. And I like that they listened to what the fans said. I don't know if it was fans or critics or both, but I do like that when, things are pointed out, people listen and switch things up. Swamp Thing has been canceled. They have, this headline says DC Universe has decided to drain the swamp and cancel Swamp Thing. There are the alleged reasons that it has been canceled. It was their newest addition to their streaming service, but they've decided to cancel it after only one episode. Many fans are, of course, wondering why. As to why, several sources are stating creative differences are involved with this decision, with one side pushing for more horror and the other pushing for a weekly procedural tone, with the latter being the reason Len Wiseman was hired to direct. So far, neither camp has verified this. Another reason could be budgetary. So, after only one episode, so there's obviously a lot going on. The final reported reason for the cancellation is that Warner Media is readying their own streaming service, as we just talked about, and it's not keen on having two streaming services under their banner. It's like the battle of the streaming services anymore, isn't it? Trying to figure out what is what and what they have and where to find it, etc. It's cool on one hand that you can find all these different shows, but on the other hand, it's like there's too many shows. I can't find anything. Yeah. The Passage has been canceled. That is the show that stars Mark Paul Gosselaar, who I'm sorry, I can't think of as anybody except Saved by the Bell, even though I know he's been in other things. But season 2, it has not been renewed for season 2. The Passage was on Fox. I had actually heard good things about it. I've heard people not being terribly thrilled that it has been canceled because they were looking forward to a second season. It's one of those where, when something's canceled during or after a season like this, there's no closure. You don't get to have that conclusion and figure out what happens. In the days of streaming services, sometimes shows like this get picked up at least for a final episode or two, so you get that closure. But the season 1 finale aired in March, and it will now serve as the series finale. The series starred Gosselaar as well as a young actress named Sania Sidney. It was an adaptation of Justin Cronin's novel trilogy, which followed a young girl, that was Sania Sidney, and a former FBI agent who was taking care of her, that was Mark Paul Gosselaar, as a virus that turned its victims into bloodsuckers, spread, and became a global pandemic. At any rate, we will not find out what happens because it has not been renewed for that second season. The Good Place has been renewed for season 4, but it has also been announced that this will be the 4th and final season. It was announced, Michael Schur said that he thinks that 50 plus episodes is a good arc, that he wants to he has kind of an arc in mind and wants to bring it to that place. Something that I can appreciate. Each of the first 3 seasons had 13 episodes. And so 13 times 3 is 36. So we'll see. That would bring us to 49. And he's quoted as saying a little over 50. So maybe this 4th season will have a few more episodes than 13. But you know what? I do appreciate when the people responsible for shows have that arc in mind, and despite, they want to bring it to that conclusion and end it on their terms and end it as their vision is, because sometimes the shows might come into existence with that arc in mind, but then if they are really popular, they will just keep going, and then sometimes they feel like they have gone off the rails, and you want to keep watching it because you love it, but you're thinking it's just weird. It's gotten weird. It's not the same show that it used to be. So I really like The Good Place. I have not finished season 3 yet, but hey, at least I've seen the first 2 seasons. I binge watched the first 2 seasons on Netflix, and then I still need to catch up on the 3rd season. It is a show of just crazy plot twists, and in fact, I watched the first couple of episodes and I was like, yeah, this is okay. I don't mind it. And then they had one of those plot twists that just sucked me right in, and from then on I was hooked. It wasn't even one of the crazy major plot twists. It was just enough that it made me intrigued, made me laugh, and it made me keep watching. So they're definitely on to something. Miracle Workers has been renewed for a 2nd season. That is the show that stars Steve Buscemi as God and Daniel Radcliffe, who you may know as Harry Potter, as an angel. And I have not seen that one, but Steve Buscemi as God just makes me laugh. He looks like a very slovenly God in the clips that I have seen, but I could be wrong. Maybe he's not. But Steve Buscemi, he cracks me up, and unfortunately, I can't look at Daniel Radcliffe and think anything but Harry Potter. That's terrible because he has moved on and he's done lots of other things. But I'm like that old auntie who can't see the kid for anything but the kid. Let's wrap that up. I won't tell you any old auntie stories. Let's go ahead and wrap up this episode of the GSMC Television Podcast. Please join me again next week when we'll have more news from the land of television. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Television Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.